So my name is Abril Reyes. I'm part of the team in Mexico. We work with the migrant screens here. I've been in TSF for 3 years, almost 3 years, and I have a 3-month-old baby, a dog, a cat, and I was forgetting. I'm not alone in that. Not a single mom. So when I went to a Jesuit university, so I had this type of education where there was a lot of emphasis on the injustices in the world and how some people are born with a lot of privilege and what we can do professionally to mitigate that gap between opportunities in amongst different populations. However, well, no, actually, when I graduated, I wanted to change the world. So I wanted to either open a shelter for little girls, or I wanted to adopt a lot of kids. I ended up going to the Sierra here in Mexico to a reserve and working to protect jaguars, and I loved it. We lived in the middle of nowhere. We had barely internet access. I was in charge of communications there, and I felt like my work mattered. However, the people I worked with were not very humane, and that was very unexpected to me. I thought that working for a good cause made you be very aware of how to treat your people right, and that was not the case. So I was very disappointed in that, and I ended up coming back to the city and getting the most corporate job in the world. I was working at a consulting firm, and I worked with brands like Starbucks and Mercedes Benz and Pizza Hut, and I really enjoyed the storytelling aspect because we worked in marketing. But I was in an internal conflict for many years because I didn't see how we would contribute to the world getting better. It was actually the opposite. We were contributing to more consumerism and more people being feeling like they weren't enough and trying to fill that in with consuming the products, and it was very effective. So I left. I left right prior to COVID, and I throughout the time I was in corporate, I always had one foot in volunteering because I felt that, I was managing campaigns with thousands of dollars to try to get publicity, and going to work with migrants, which is what I did here in Guadalajara in one of the shelters, helped me keep my feet on the ground, helped me see how there were people crossing the entire country with $5 and how that was possible and how that was dire. That was the only choice they had. So that was very helpful. So when I decided to take that turn of events, I noticed that there was a vacancy here, and I was kind of a perfect fit because it was working with migrants, which is the type of volunteerism that I had been doing, and it was communication skills and storytelling, which is what I had been doing in corporate. So that's how I ended up here. And since I've done that, I feel a bigger sense of an inner congruency than I had before. I think yes, and it goes way back. Um, I grew up in Canada. I was born in Mexico, but I grew up in Canada, and life was very simple there. There was no inequality. I mean, I was a kid, but there was no equality. There was no machismo. And when I came back, it was a very big shock. I came back when I was 12 or 13 years old, and it was shocking to me how people could get used to these levels of poverty and just go along with their lives. And it's also a familiar thing, like a family matter. My mom has always been, she's an educator, and when she was young, when she was around my age, she would open different education centers in parts of the city that were completely unattended, where kids did not have access to education. So, and my dad works at the Jesuit college. So it's been, part of my identity since I could remember. It's not that I would love to change the world, but it's more of a I don't feel comfortable if I'm not contributing in some way. I feel like there's something lacking. Okay, so we all work with connecting people in crisis in Mexico and in the Latin American region. migration is considered an ongoing crisis because we have thousands of people leaving their homes year after year. They're only getting bigger, the numbers of people leaving. And what we do is try to give them information so that they're not walking around in the dark. Many of them go to the shelters that are set up by different organizations along the route from Guatemala to to the US, and we place key information in those shelters so that they know what routes are safer, what their rights are, what the Mexican government can and authorities can and can't do to them, how to do the process legally if possible, how to find work. We're trying to give them the type of information that they're not really necessarily going to find on social media, which is where they spend most of the time, but that can have the biggest positive impact in their lives as possible. Okay, so I started as a support to the person that was designing content for the screens. So we did, how to make these huge Word documents more attractive in a format that migrants can find attractive and can actually read and listen to. That was what I've been doing for the past year and a half. But this year I'm moving more towards, I love making systems. I'm very nerdy and I love creating systems that people use. So Armando noticed that my boss and my superior, and he put me into a role where I'm making sure that the project is on schedule and that there was a slight visibility issue because people on the ground were working on one thing and the mission required other things. And that wasn't a problem because the people on the ground were working on things that we needed, but there was no way to really unite them. And that's what I'm doing right now. I'm working on monitoring and project evaluation, making systems. I love the fact that we have so much to do and it can be very overwhelming. And through the right methodology, we can get it all done. Like efficiency is something I find very sexy.
Yeah. So when you say making system, it's like organizations, calendars,
Yes.
plannings, all that
So,
stuff.
yeah, it's project management. It depends on the platform. Right now, we're on a pilot project using Monday, but we also use, Google Drive, Excel. It's just a lot of brainstorming, a lot of sessions within the group to make sure that what people are working on is in line with what we want for that month, for that week, for that day. So we don't get lost in giving priority to things that aren't really necessary in that moment. Oh, okay. There's two. One is ideological, and one is, in the day to day. In the day to day, trying to get people to buy into using my systems is hard because everyone has their own system. So I have to do a lot of convincing there. And I have to make sure that they work because you can't change someone's habits if the alternative you're proposing isn't going to help. And that applies as well to the content that we're exposing the migrants to. I mean, we can have the most accurate format, but if it's not attractive to them, they're not going to listen. So it goes both within the team and also with the beneficiaries that we're working with. Ideologically, I feel sometimes a little bit of despair because we're doing the best we can to help a crisis, but the bigger players in this context still don't want to help them out. So they're pretty stuck. Right now, I mean, a bit of local context. The US was admitting a different type of procedure for migrants to cross the border. They're making it harder every day. And it makes me feel despair because I know the situation they're in and they're trying to avoid it. They're trying to look somewhere else so that they don't see it and they don't have to solve it.
Hmm. This must be hard to be like to, so do you go on the field? Do you see
Yes.
yes. And do people share their experiences with you and yeah. And That must be difficult, I assume.
Yes, it's also, though, the most gratifying part of the project because it's very easy to get lost in, the office and being just one more office member and going to work. But when you go in field and you talk to the people that are using the tool that you're working on and you see the impact, I mean, I've had teenage mothers letting us know that they decided to apply for asylum with their 9-month-old kid after watching the content on the screens. That's what makes it worthwhile. There's many. I think the recent trip that I did to the north of Mexico to see the conditions in which people are migrating, it made me realize the how desperate the situation is. And it was also hope giving to me because they were talking about the content that they were seeing. But it's an ugly sight. It's an ugly sight to see so many people sleeping outside of a shelter because there's no more room for them, and then the shelter volunteers being like, "We'd love to have you in, but you just don't fit." Um, yeah, it's a tough scene to watch, but it's also superhuman. I have hope that what the let's see how I put this, the day-to-day work that we're doing is eventually going to contribute to a change in the bigger scope of things. I hope that the more people hear the message that no human being is illegal, the more they're going to understand it and make it their own. Right now, we're living in the context that says the contrary. It says that if you're illegal, usually in the United States, you're not allowed in. But we're all part of the same Mother Earth, and we're lucky enough or unlucky enough to be born somewhere. So I hope that changes within my lifetime.
Thank you. Do you have anything to add?
No, I think it's all good. Thank you, Ines, for the
Thank
opportunity.
you. It was great. It was great to hear you and to listen to your insights. Really, thank you.
Awesome.